Growing sweet potato slips from grocery store sweet potatoes is incredibly easy and cheap. So to grow sweet potato slips from grocery store sweet potatoes, you buy grocery store sweet potatoes, whatever variety you like. You just make sure that they're organic. Let them sit in your cabinet for a while. Let them age a little bit, a couple of months, and then you're gonna put them in some soil like this. Get some soil, some good potting mix or whatever you have. Plant the sweet potato about halfway in the soil. Keep it watered. In about 6 weeks, when your sweet potato slips look like this, and you have these nodules, all roots will be developed along these nodules, you can take those sweet potato slips and you can plant them, or you can put them in a container of water. Use a jar, use a cup, use a glass, doesn't really matter, as long as it holds water. Change out your water every 2 to 3 days, and in about a week's time, you are ready to plant this in ground. Important to note, sweet potatoes like it warm. You're not gonna wanna plant this outside until temperatures are above 65 degrees at night, and even warmer during the day. So when your sweet potato slips are ready, and they have that little node and they're ready to begin forming roots, we're gonna go ahead and cut them off. Now, I could theoretically take this, you know what, I think that is what I'm gonna do. We're gonna take this and we're gonna separate this into 2 sweet potato slips because there's lots of nodes. So I'm just gonna cut it off down here. Okay, so now we have the sweet potato slip. All right, and then we're going to, let's go ahead, so we have some nodes here, and we will begin to get nodes up higher, so we're gonna go ahead and cut it right here. Let's do that. Okay, so now we have this one. We're gonna drop that in some water. And now we also have this one. This one might be a little harder, but we're gonna drop that in some water as well. And in a couple of days, about a week, it'll begin to look like this, where we have roots. Now this has not got enough water in it. We want to keep it fairly full. I actually just dumped the water out this morning and switched it out, and so a little bit spilled out, and I haven't refreshed it because we were about to plant it in ground. But typically we want to keep this pretty full. We want to keep it pretty full like this, and we want to switch the water out every 3 days or so, 2 to 3 days, okay? So when your sweet potato slips are ready, when they've got several roots on them, and they've been in the water, you know, like I said, it probably take at least a week. It can go a little bit longer. We don't want to go too long though. This one's actually been there about 2 weeks, and it's starting to develop quite a bit of roots. So we want to go ahead and get this in the ground, and it will begin to develop sweet potatoes. Interestingly enough, sweet potatoes are not a potato. They are part of the morning glory family. So completely different species, although we call them a potato. But basically, I'm just gonna dig a hole, and I'm just gonna make sure that I get those roots nice and covered. I don't have to worry about going too high up on the plant because you can bury it fairly deeply, and you're gonna have sweet potatoes, you're gonna have roots that develop along the all along the stem, and the tubers that come from that are gonna be sweet potatoes. Now, from here, we want to space our plants about 1 foot apart. Eventually, I'm gonna plant sweet potatoes all back through here where the carrots are, but I have not pulled these out yet. So I wanna make the best use of my space. I've got several sweet potato slips ready. I'm gonna go ahead and begin to plant these out. As I pull the carrots out, I'm gonna plant even more sweet potatoes until I have this bed. Over the next couple of weeks, I'll have this bed completely covered. And then we'll allow the sweet potatoes to stay in here until just before the first frost, or just around the time of our first frost. And then when we harvest those sweet potatoes, we will have an abundance. Hopefully we will have an abundance of sweet potatoes. But like I said, we're gonna plant about 1 foot apart. So I'm using this to measure. This has this is 6 inches. So if I go 6 inches, 6 inches, that's 1 foot. And I'm gonna pull out this little tiny carrot because it's not really gonna develop. It's getting too hot. And transplant I'm gonna take off this bottom leaf here. It's not gonna hurt anything to take that bottom leaf off and transplant this a little bit deeper. Okay. Now I have several more that I'm gonna go ahead and plant, but when you get yours planted, it's really important that you water them in. So we're gonna do a nice drink of water. Now, what's interesting about this, sweet potatoes need a lot of fertilizer. They like nitrogen. They're not like a well-balanced fertilizer, really. So something with a decent NPK, something, you know, maybe a 555 or something around there would be good. We went ahead and used an all-purpose fertilizer. We went ahead and used Trifecta Plus on this bed. And so we used Trifecta Plus over the whole bed, and we've fertilized it fairly heavily. So I'm not gonna add any additional fertilizer right now at the time of planting. If I hadn't done that, however, I could do one of two things. I could either go ahead and plant everything and broadcast a granular fertilizer across the bed, maybe water it in with a water-soluble fertilizer, or to save money, I could take a handful of granular fertilizer, something like Trifecta Plus, a nice organic granular fertilizer, and mix that in the dirt in the planting hole at the time of planting. But like I said, I'm gonna skip that step because I've already added a ton of fertilizer to this bed, and there's no need to overdo it. So I'm gonna finish planting these out, and I hope that you'll plant sweet potatoes in your garden. I thank you so much for hanging out in the garden with me today. May your garden be full of grace, and may you be abundantly blessed. We'll see you next time. Bye.